Distributed DevOps with Jay Harris.
The Azure DevOps Podcast is a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using Microsoft technologies. Each show brings you hard-hitting interviews with industry experts, innovating better methods, and sharing success stories. Listen on to learn how to increase quality, ship quickly, and operate well. And now your host, Jeffrey Palermo.
Welcome to the show. I'm Jeffrey Palermo, your humble host. And make sure to check out www.azuredevops.show for past episodes and show notes. And I'm excited that lots of people are taking me up on the offer that I presented for a complimentary 30-point DevOps inspection of your environment. It's helping a lot of people. And if you run a user group that has now gone virtual, I'd love to speak at your group event, and I bet you a lot of other people would. But so go ahead and just reach out and ask. And a lot of groups around the country are doing things virtually, which does kind of open up reach. And if you're tuning in for the first time, the Azure DevOps Podcast is for developers shipping software with Microsoft technologies. And my goal is for all development teams to be able to move fast, deliver quality, and run their systems with confidence. So today, my guest on the show is Jay Harris, and he's an entrepreneur, speaker, software consultant, and the president of Arana Software. He's been developing on the web since 1995. He is a Microsoft regional director and a multi-time Microsoft MVP. He recognizes that the greatest application performance bottleneck is a developer's time. So his continuing quest is for frameworks, modules, tools, and practices that make developers stronger, fitter, happier, and more productive. Jay, welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
Awesome. I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm fantastic. And as we sit here, we're staying healthy and working remotely. As you know, a lot of us and a lot of people are used to working remotely, but it's new for a lot of people. So it's a time we got to get through together, and we pray for everybody's health. But you do a lot of speaking, and quite a few people are familiar with you and your work. But for those who are getting to know you for the first time, what have been some of the highlights of your career? How did you end up essentially running your own software consulting firm?
That's an interesting question. I've been running this company. It's been a full-time endeavor for me since 2011. Though the company itself is 3 years older than that. It was sort of the old boiling the frog cliche. It came about from being, whether that was a software developer or my most recent working for the man style position was the manager of app dev for a company in Detroit called Velasys. They're the coupon company. With that, I had been working on the side like many software developers do. And that sort of that side gig grew and grew and grew. And it got to the point where I'd work 40 hours a week at my normal day job and come home, and it felt like another 40 hours a week working on side work. And that was just too much. So I got rid of the main gig and turned the side job into my main gig. I like it a lot more, especially the responsibility that comes with it. I suppose you could say that it's also the power that comes with it. I certainly remember days, especially earlier in my career, where it felt like yet another project that was underbid and overcommitted, and somebody else that made some promise of, sure, we can deliver this thing in through 3 months when it was actually a 6-month project. Well, that person is out, I don't know, playing golf, not being with their families, while the entire dev team is on yet another death march, getting things done in time. So that's probably my favorite part about having my own company is that doesn't happen anymore. And I suppose if it does, or maybe the rare occurrence that it does, it's on all of us. It's on me as well. So I'm certainly not going to have my team pulling a death march without me being right there in the trenches with them.
Yeah. Well, you're in the club that has over 2 decades of experience just doing this custom software. Just being in the custom software field, designing systems, and there's so many legacy systems out there. But at the same time, the rate of new applications seems to be accelerating, not going down.
Absolutely. And there's companies, we have clients that are very much in both worlds, like so many companies are, where there's new applications that are in all of the latest trends, the latest shiny, because it was just started in the past 6 months. And there's applications that are 20 years old, written in classic ASP and VB script, and many people hardly know what they do or how they work. They just work somehow.
Yeah. Now, you help your clients' development teams implement automated DevOps processes, among other things, right?
Oh, yes, absolutely, amongst other things.
So, in that front, what do you observe? What do you think out there seems to be the easier things for people to implement, and what do they seem to need a little bit more assistance to get going?
Oddly, we find that continuous integration is probably the simplest thing to put in place, and continuous delivery is one of the hardest. It's easy to automate the build. I mean, half the time we already have the build somewhat automated. We hit, build inside of our, the Visual Studio menu, or hit Control-Shift-B and it does its thing, and we can automate that into execute some sort of command in a prompt to go kick off MS Build. That's easy. But getting it to a place where it can self-test, self-assess, and self-deploy into a production environment, that's hard from not only a technical standpoint, but from a logistical and business standpoint as well. So even though CI and CD are in the same breath in most worlds, they're the easiest and the hardest thing to put in place from our perspective.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, do you have a favorite tool stack at the moment for a DevOps pipeline?
Everything that we do for DevOps Pipeline is in Azure DevOps. We converted everything over that we have over to Azure DevOps probably about a year and a half ago. I had been working in continuous integration for a long time. My speaking career started out giving talks on continuous integration all the way back, 2006, 2007-ish on cruisecontrol.net. If you ever remember that one. Wow. And made its way through TeamCity and out of TeamCity and back into TeamCity. And for a while, we were also doing TeamCity and Jenkins at the same time, since for us, TeamCity did great with the .NET stuff, and Jenkins did better with the not .NET stuff. But even that we're managing 2 different VMs to host different continuous integration pipelines. And sometimes we'd have projects that would be in both stacks, which is its own nightmare. And we found that Azure DevOps just does a fantastic job, regardless of the stack that it's in. So yeah, about a year and a half ago, we moved everything to Azure DevOps. Nice.
So in today, as we're recording this, and for a few weeks, so many areas have kind of stay at home, work from home, try not to get out, guidance from the different government entities just to stay healthy. And so lots of teams that don't have experience working in a distributed fashion are now almost forcibly having to figure it out quick. And you've got some thoughts on that. What can you share with the people out there that aren't used to working distributed from their teammates and they're trying to do it?
Oh yeah, with everybody working from home, certainly there's companies like Arana Software that have been fully remote for forever. But there's even more companies, far more companies that haven't, and they've been sort of thrust in this work from home world. And I see a lot of articles and tips on Twitter and other social media about, hey, here's some things you can do to go be productive working from home, and ignore the draw of, I don't know, Animal Crossing. DevOps is, I don't see a lot of those tips on DevOps, but with our clients that are thrust in this work from home world, that's certainly a struggle. Things like, for example, SQL databases on Azure. We're familiar with the firewall rules that's sitting on top of the database, and the easy stuff is to just whitelist an IP address to be able to access the database. And certainly you might want to, you're going to have the production database locked down much tighter than the developer's database, but everybody needs to be able to access the developer's database. And now, especially companies that have those, they're small teams, they're not tiny shops, but maybe several dozen developers on their team. Now they're starting to struggle with, oh, wow, we've got to whitelist a whole lot of IP addresses. And wait, somebody's cable modem at home rebooted and picked up a new IP address.
Ouch.
And now we've got to go change the rules on the Azure firewall. And then compounded with the default interfaces inside of the Azure portal are giving it some sort of generic name. It can go through, hey, what's the client IP address? What's my IP? And automatically pre-fills it into the form. And you just have yet another IP address with client IP address as its descriptor, because no one bothered to change it. And before long, you've got 300 different IP addresses on that firewall, and you don't know which ones are actually active, which ones are necessary. So introducing a whole new world of security.
Well, that's just a general IT topic too. You raise up. It's the question of, if everybody's at home, but then we're accessing Azure. Okay, there's a Cisco VPN for anything on premise if you have that. But if it's Azure, you can just go straight, like you said, with a whitelisted IP. But there's people asking the question of, what does it mean to have a corporate network when everyone's essentially using coffee shop internet? It's none of these cable modem or phone company internet devices have been reviewed, and who knows what's there.
Right.
Does everybody VPN, or are people adopting the newfangled software-defined perimeter? I think there's a lot of dust that hasn't quite settled yet.
Oh, sure. And people with their home worlds, their home office, their home network hasn't been, it's not designed for work. It's designed for home. So
Netflix and Hulu.
with right. But you're working from home now, and your life partner is working from home, and now your kids are out of school until who knows when. So they're all home, and everybody's putting this tremendous demand on the pipe into the house now. You're on a video call, your partner's on a video call. Both of the kids are streaming either Zoom calls with their teachers, or they're taking a break and watching Netflix. That's a lot of bandwidth coming down on the pipe that it didn't need a month ago. And of course, oftentimes, it's not really the Netflix downloads that are the most strenuous on the system. It's all those Zoom calls with upload, because our home connections are optimized for download bandwidth, not for upload. We might get a gigabit down and get something like 10 megabytes up, something fractional, something pathetic.
That's a good point. With all the video conferencing, we might see an increase in upload. An upload throughput just in the service providers, just because now the usage is different.
We can hope. And just in home connections is one of the things that we're advocating to many, is having, let's say, a stipend for their employees to help cover the cost of home connection, because 20 megabytes down might be more than enough for the occasional family movie that you watch together on a Sunday afternoon. But it's not going to be enough if everybody's at home beating on that pipeline all day long.
And trying to get the new version of Visual Studio to download.
Right. And of course, it's that, again, hits us into an Azure DevOps, just a DevOps world of where we're going to run against the wall with upload speeds. Anybody that's tried to do a deployment now from home, working from home, and waiting forever for that upload to complete, making pulling down a backup of that developer database will come down in seconds. But if you had to restore that database from a local work from home copy, that's going to take a while to get that backup file to upload back up into wherever it needs to go, whether it's cloud hosted or otherwise.
The Azure DevOps Podcast is sponsored by ClearMeasure, a software engineering firm and Microsoft Gold partner, empowering development teams to be their best. ClearMeasure equips developers with the DevOps tools, methods, and automation necessary to focus on building their applications, rather than wrestling with builds, deployments, or environments. Click clear-measure.com to see whether a DevOps implementation is for you.
Hey, this is Jeffrey. Do you ever wonder if your software project is on the right path? It's really common for software projects to experience delays, to have the quality not where it needs to be, or have the team spending more time maintaining the software than you really should. In my practice, we know the challenges implementing all parts of DevOps, and it can make your head spin how many things you have to think about, and somewhere in your gut, that something's missing. So I've created a comprehensive 30-point DevOps inspection, reviewing your current process, methods, tools, source control, build integration, the various levels of testing, provisioning and maintaining environments, deploying, logging, telemetry, everything you need to think about in a high throughput, high productivity DevOps environment. And it really helps you gain peace of mind knowing that you're on the right track. And we are offering some more of our really popular 30-point DevOps inspections, and it's normally a $5,000 value, but I'm giving it away for free for my podcast listeners. Just send me an email, jeffrey@clear-measure.com. That's Jeffrey, and I'd be happy to inspect your existing DevOps environment, whether you use Azure DevOps Services, Octopus Deploy, TeamCity, any number of tools, because there are a lot out there. But what's important is that you have a complete and automated DevOps environment put together the right way. So get a second pair of eyes. Send me an email. Now, we had a recent show where some people working with Windows virtual desktops. And that's not quite a next finish provisioning experience just yet, but it sounds pretty interesting when you just think about the fact that not everybody, very few people, are going to have gigabit connections and not care much about latency. But if you could have a lot of those workloads, if you could actually have a workstation in the Azure data center and just be looking at a screen of it, that opens up a lot of possibilities without having to wait for all these internet providers to catch up.
Oh, sure. It absolutely does. Provided that you have the connectivity to handle that. So all of it's still, and there's double-edged swords all over the place. If your internet goes down, now there's no more RDP into that VM.
That's true. So what kinds of things are you working with on your client teams when just managing the DevOps process when you have every person in a different place? What processes tend to work and what changes?
So that's an interesting challenge as well for us, since we're a fully remote company, working fully remote from our clients, even when our clients might themselves not be fully remote. So for the things that are cloud-based of Azure DevOps, taking the business and the process out of it. The technology is easy. The technology is not easy, but hardened might be a better word to use. Setting up there's technologies and platforms and many different options in place for setting up continuous integration, setting up continuous delivery, setting up source control. We're finding, though, that many of the several of our clients are understanding a little better some of the struggles that either remote vendors like us or remote members on their own staff have been running up against for a while now. Things like not having distributed, disconnected source control systems. Things like using TFS instead of Git, for example, because that remote internet connection is nowhere near as solid as the internal network inside of the building. So now some of them that have sort of backburnered or backlogged transition from TFS to Git. Now that's becoming a little bit more of a priority, since everybody on the whole team is feeling that pain. But as far as other tools, particularly when they're single platform, like relying almost entirely on Azure DevOps, for example, it's relatively easy, relatively straightforward to have your entire team automatically added into different projects if you need to, as well as pull in people from different organizations, different Azure ADs, as an example. We do that quite often, whether it's adding our team members into our clients' Azure AD space, or the inverse of sometimes we will manage all of the Azure AD presence for a client and invite their team members into it. So a lot of that stuff is hardened. And like I'm sure with ClearMeasure, there's many of organizations like ours have been doing that sort of thing for a while, and it's just more of a bringing up to speed clients that are just suddenly thrust into this world, and coming up with the almost ancillary logistical things of, now that the office is closed down, who's going to feed the fish? Because we still have a fish tank in the lobby of the office. Who's going to feed the fish?
So how are you doing the stand-ups? How's that changed, and what kinds of things have you focused on there? What works well?
Stand-ups, what works well for us is video calls. Most of it's Skype calls. And we do try and encourage people to use video, but we certainly don't require it. We find that it does help to see the face. It does help to prevent a lot of the misunderstanding when you can see the facial expressions that go along with the voice. And honestly, we've also found that it helps keep people honest, so to speak. If you can see somebody's face, you can tell if they're paying attention or if their focus is shifted off to something off screen.
Yeah.
Of course, that's not a hardened rule. That's not something I will ever advocate that managers criticize their team members for, because maybe they're taking notes. Maybe they're just not a maintain eye contact with the little green dot that's on the top of their monitor kind of person. And all of that is okay. It's just all additional pieces of input. But at the same time, we've sort of shied away from the everybody crowd around from the camera stand-up. In many cases, our stand-ups will, as a group, all in the same call, will maybe be 2 days a week. especially with the current work from home world, which is very atypical of work from home worlds, because normally my kids aren't home. My kids aren't mine are small. They're second grade and first grade. So sometimes it's still a challenge to keep them quiet. My son, he's 8. He still likes to use his outside voice everywhere.
Oh yeah.
So that outside voice will sometimes make its way onto a call, or he'll get excited about something and want to burst into my office even though the door is closed. So that has presented challenges for team members on calls, or even just on scheduled ones like stand-up. And certainly why I advocate against the always-on call that I've seen on a few social media places. I would not be comfortable at all with having my camera on all the time for my team members, because at any time a little one might run into screenshot in their underwear because, I don't know, they got excited about some idea that they had and they haven't finished getting dressed yet. So
yeah,
that's our new work from home world.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are just giving a bunch of grace for pets and kids and other things just because we're all in it together. And yeah, some people have a dedicated office that's separate or secluded enough. And I bet you the market for these finished out office backyard sheds is going up. Now, if you're in a city or a condo tower or whatnot, that option. But if you're in the suburbs or out more rural area, it's pretty affordable to get essentially a storage shed. And there's companies that finish them out, nice office, and you're totally separate. Like the kids would have to run across the backyard to get to you.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, for us, when we bought this house here in Las Vegas 3 years ago, we both work from home. So, and have worked from home for many years. So we bought a house with that in mind, with dedicated office space for each of us, separately for each of us in mind. But many, maybe even most in our industry, that wasn't the goal when purchasing a house. So they might not have that, as you said, the dedicated space for it.
Right, exactly. Well, certainly if, especially for people without kids who might be really convenient for an apartment or a condo tower, downtown in a city, there is not a dedicated office. It's just not happening.
And it's not like you can get away from the house and go work at a Starbucks or whatever your favorite local coffee shop is anymore, because those are all shut down.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that I did. And yeah, working 100% remote for some time. I just finished out a little area of our barn. So I'm fortunate enough to not actually be in the house in the same structure when the kids are running around, and they're doing homeschool, which I think is pretty awesome. The 7-year-old is learning how to type. Typing.com, plug for typing.com. It's pretty cool.
Really? Nice. Okay. Excellent. I'll have to look into that.
Well, it's a life skill. They're not, I think I have my 7th grader, she got to 7th grade and the schools aren't even talking about typing from a normal practice perspective. They just kind of assume it's like, oh yeah, they're generally familiar enough with the keyboard, but they're just hunting and pecking, looking at the keyboard. And I said, no. You need to be able to use the computer while keeping your eyes on the screen. That is the standard.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to backfill that.
I was several years into my programming career before I got that sort of proficiency. And even when I was to the point where I could keep my head up while I was typing, it wasn't in normal traditional fingers on the home row style. It was still, for the most part, 1 or 2 fingers that were hitting most of the keys. Yeah. Yeah, I get it. I understand.
But it's just, and especially, for programmers, it's hugely enabling. But for the youth of today, where more and more work is going to go through a computer, and yeah, you could say there's a lot of things you can do on a tablet, but if you're gonna create or design anything, that QWERTY keyboard has kind of become a necessary tool for all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. Though at the same time, it's My kids have iPads, and they don't type on their iPads very often. Certainly, so much of that interface is touch, is using your fingers to pinch and zoom and drag and whatever else in a non-typing manner. And my daughter, she's 6. She's got small hands, so she can't reach all of those different keys on the keyboard. So she has on her iPad the keyboard is in this strange to me, split docked format where there's a little tiny half of a keyboard on the left side and a little tiny half of a keyboard on the right side
for the thumbs.
That works great for her thumbs. Of course, when I try and do anything on her iPad, I can't even use this. These buttons are too small for my fingers. I don't understand anymore. Help me.
Right. I think the it'll be interesting to see how good the dictation capability is. And I've been playing around in Microsoft Word, and Google Docs has it too. Or you click the microphone and just start talking, and it does its best trying to transcribe what you're saying.
For sure.
So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Let's see. Well, how should we wrap this up? Do you want to say anything more about distributed DevOps? Any other key points to get in?
I suppose one of the points that I had written down, and it sort of was related to companies contributing into connection speeds, is companies sort of having a stipend for tools, hardware at home in general, not just for helping with the connection speed. Because if you needed a new headset at work, your company's going to buy you a new headset at work. And that should extend to home as well. Things like, we lose a lot of time to, hey, Jeffrey, can you mute your mic because there's a lot of background noise, because you're just running off of the headset and running off of the built-in stuff and not off the headset. So
yeah, that's right. And this is the basic setup. You got to have either a USB mic with a boom mic. I think they're $30. No, they were sold out for a while. And then the Jabra USB speakerphones seem to be really popular for something so you don't have to have a headset on the whole time. But you're right. The built-in microphone is not going to cut it. It just doesn't. It picks up everything, especially if you. And I would surmise, if you agree with this, Jay, I would surmise that a regular keyboard and mouse is going to be more ergonomical, more comfortable than trying to hunch over a laptop keyboard with. So even though
I'm on a laptop with a separate keyboard.
Yeah. Docking stations for laptop have gotten so good where, if you've got a comfortable setup and now you've gone home, you really should just have taken all of that equipment and set up your desk the same way, so that you don't have second class ergonomics.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, as we wrap up, now we're talking about distributed DevOps, but I think we saw a risk that the Build conference, it's going to be in the middle of this quarantine time, so they're going to try to do Microsoft's going to try to do a virtual Build conference. But at the same time, .NET is moving forward. What are some of the things that you're looking for if people are not kind of keeping up with the direction of where .NET is going? What would you recommend that they check into?
Oh, wow. If you haven't already, maybe you have since you're listening to this podcast, but certainly Azure DevOps as a whole for non-Microsoft platforms. Speaking at many conferences across the world, I like when I go to the Vox Days conferences. Any of the Vox conferences, they're more Java-based. And here I am, the Microsoft Regional Director and Microsoft MVP at what is largely a Java conference. Jay, what are you doing here? It feels like which one of these is not like the other ones singing in the background. And yet everybody's very surprised at how effectively the Microsoft's DevOps platform works with non-Microsoft technology stacks, works with Java, works with Ruby, works with PHP, and even PHP. We have, as some of our projects will be WordPress sites that are on a technology stack called Bedrock. It's this great little utility, I guess I could call it that helps configure and secure WordPress so that you can have your base configuration stored inside of Git. WordPress inside of Git, it still blows my mind when I think about it. But using things like package restore to restore the WordPress engine, restore any standardized themes that you use or any plugins that you can use and deploy it everywhere. But this is it's a PHP stack that we're still running through Microsoft's Azure DevOps. And many people are surprised by that. So I guess that's two things. Bedrock, if you're at all using a WordPress site, and Azure DevOps for things that aren't the .NET flavors of technology.
Awesome. Yeah, and with Microsoft, by extension, GitHub acquiring NPM, there's a lot of cross-pollination of platforms. It's the divide is being torn down. So.
Sure, absolutely. I like that though, and it's sort of feels like it's always been that way. A lot of that cross-pollination, things like NUnit for our unit testing frameworks. NUnit didn't originate in the .NET world.
Right.
We stole it. And Hibernate. We took regular Hibernate and
that's right.
Like so many things 15 years ago, we tacked an N on the front of it, kind of like NUnit,
right,
and stole it, called it a day. So yeah.
Hey, but then Java stole C# generics. So it started going back the other way too.
Absolutely. That works for me.
Awesome. Hey, well, Jay, this has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
Awesome. And until next time, keep shipping.
You've been listening to the Azure DevOps Podcast, a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using Microsoft technologies. Go to www.azuredevops.show for show notes and other episodes. On behalf of your host, Jeffrey Palermo, and our sponsors, thanks for listening, and may God bless you.